Welcome to the Evolved Caveman Podcast. I am Dr. John, the guide for your heroic journey towards greater health, success, and most importantly, happiness. And now, on with the show. Hey, all you avid listeners out there, this is Dr. John, and if you enjoy what you're hearing on these joint podcasts with me and my fiancée, Jory Rose, please know that we are offering a week-long retreat in Costa Rica in April of 2023 at one of the top resorts in the country where the body workers are next level, and you will learn from myself and Jory how to be in better relationship to yourself, to your loved one, and to everyone else. This is going to be a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Please feel free to check out the podcast notes for more links, details, and info. Thanks so much, and now on with the show. Hey, everybody, this is Dr. John back with another episode of the Evolved Caveman, and I'm really excited to have with me today Ellen McCormack. And Ellen is working on a book, which the working title is Going Postal, How Getting Angry in Public Can Be Transformational. And she has a story about going postal that she'll share in just a minute. And her blurb for the book says, while many books on anger offer helpful steps to follow or fixing yourself, learning your triggers, managing your strong, angry emotion, or retraining your brain, I believe what you need to do when the shit hits the fan is just stay put in an angry moment. Pay attention to, be aware of, and tune in to what's happening inside you. Staying with it creates a solution through it. Having an angry outburst can be the perfect environment, space, or place to create a new you, a better integrated you, which directly impacts the direction you want to take with your life. And she is looking for ideas and thoughts and feedback for this book as it's still in progress. And you can email her at connectingthroughanger@gmail.com, where through is spelled THRU, connectingthroughanger@gmail.com. Ellen, how are you? Welcome.
Thanks for that intro, John. You're awesome. I appreciate it. And yeah, I'm always looking for shortcuts like that. So through THRU in my Gmail email address. Thanks. Thanks for that.
So tell me, how did you come to this point of writing this book?
I've always been interested, I think, in creative writing. And I didn't know that probably till high school, taken some English class, and then I think college also, an English comp class. And I found I really liked creative writing. Then I went to grad school, and in my doctoral classes, and then writing a doctoral dissertation of over 400 pages, although I couldn't get into creative writing because it was more scientific writing, there was still flexibility actually with each chapter for me to do a very integrative, creative weaving of the research that I had done on each chapter. And what I found in writing my dissertation, John, was, wow, writing has a life of its own that was so much fun. And I thoroughly enjoyed the whole writing process. Yes, I got frustrated at times. I'm like, forget this. I'm over it. But in the end, I finished, and I love the process. And what happened next was that was in 1997 when I got my Ph.D. And I've always had in the back of my mind, I would love to write again. But I'm like, well, what would I write about? And it just stayed, it's always been in the back of my mind. Then I happened to be on Facebook, and I don't know how, but a video popped up, and I was listening to it. And this younger man was talking about everybody can be an author. So I'm listening, and I just loved his approach. And so I bought his process. And let's say I'm making this number up, but just to give your audience an idea. Let's say there are 100 steps before you get to the end of publishing. I'm probably on step 20.
Okay.
So I'm very much in the early steps, and I've been loving the process that Matt Rudnitsky has in his punchy book Accelerator. But I've been stuck a little bit because I need some more feedback before I feel I can because I'm looking for clarity within my own self. And I've put my little book bait that you shared a little bit about in your intro. I put that out to family and friends. And it's interesting that very few have gotten back to me. But anyway, so how did I...
Wait. Why do you think that is? Why do you think no one's gotten back to you?
I have two thoughts about that off the top of my head. One is people are uncomfortable because I sent them my book bait and it's 2 or 3 pages, the longer version. And people don't want to go there. And I think people don't like admitting, especially women, don't like admitting that they get angry or that's an issue. So I'm guessing that's because in a couple people that I've spoken with, one is an older cousin of mine in New York, like in her 80s, and who has said, there's no way I would allow that to even happen to me. I would never put myself getting angry in public. I happen to be in the post office at the clerk. There is no way. She said she would just continue to feel guilt. And there was, that was it. Closed case, period. So, but I'm learning. I'm learning from all the input I'm getting. It's helping me.
Yeah. And I mean, it's fascinating to me because I've done work in anger management for a long time. And one of the struggles I've had is how do you reach people to say, hey, it's okay if you struggle with this, and here's some tools that will help. But I think to your point, no one wants to talk about it. Everyone wants to pretend it's not an issue because it only happens, 1, 2, 3, 4% of the time. But the other part of it is that when we discussed this before getting on air is when we get angry with each other, we externalize all blame. So we just put the blame on the other person. So it's not really, I have an anger problem. It's if you would stop being such a fill in the blank, I wouldn't be so mad, which, I mean, that's really, really common. The vast majority of us do that. And the problem with it is it gives all our power away to the other party.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
It's like handing that emotional remote control to the other person and saying, here, mess with me.
Yeah. Wow, you brought up
I totally feel you on this issue of not getting much feedback. So what's the feedback that you're looking for?
I think number one, and maybe I could post my book. It's called Book Bait because Matt calls it that. It's like a little taste, a little appetizer of what I'm trying to do. I don't know that it'll be in my book. It could be something of a chapter. It could be an introduction. I don't know. But it's a little taste of what I'm trying to do. And I'm looking for feedback. Number one, probably my book is for people who are like me, who, number one, maybe grew up in an environment where there was anger as a child growing up in the family. Number two, you took on that without even knowing it, that became a response that you have to life. And number three is the part that I'm so interested in is, okay, given that my father screamed and yelled almost every day of our lives in our home. I have 2 older brothers. Never at me, the youngest and the only girl, never at me. But was I impacted by that? Big time. Yeah. I found that out in my therapy. A number of years I was in therapy.
You just have to witness it. You don't have to be the recipient of it.
Exactly. And so I think the third type of person that might be interested in what I'm writing about is not only that they grew up maybe with an environment of anger. Number two, now that's part of their personality, so to speak. But number three is the transformation that is possible in and through that seemingly defective character. That's the hope. That's the transformational piece. And that's really what my doctoral work is all about, spiritual formation.
And your PhD,
yes.
Sorry, your PhD is in?
It's called the Science of Foundational Human Formation. But the easier way to think about it is formative spirituality.
Okay.
Formative meaning, and that gets into the quantum mechanics stuff that you and I
which we're going to get into, which I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah.
So tell me, I think the other thing that might help the audience is tell the story that was so pivotal for you in the post office.
Okay. Do you want me to read the story? It would take 5 minutes to read or just recap it? Read it?
Whatever you want.
Because it's in the first person, I think it might be easiest to do that. Okay, so for everyone who's listening, well, I'll just read this. I think it'll be in here. I'm ready to leave the post office when the clerk says, "You can put these stamps on over there." I had just paid her with a check to pay for 25 9x13 envelopes for I was the secretary for a professional organization. I paid and she's pushing onto the little window there. "You could put these stamps on over there." I'm furious and I say to her, "Don't you do that?" Presumptuously, I'm thinking, after all, isn't that her job? I can feel my body tense up. My facial muscles tighten. My eyes feel like weapons rather than instruments for offering hospitality, which privately I would often pride myself for having. My heart's racing. I feel my chest muscles tightening more. She says we're only allowed to put stamps on 5 articles. She says it very matter-of-factly. This seems so ridiculous to me. I'm embarrassed for not knowing this policy of procedure. Maybe she's right, Ellen. No, I believe I'm right. And I retort with vehement exasperation. I've never heard of such a thing. I'm stunned. I feel embarrassed venting my anger on her. I feel shocked by the ferocity of my words to this non-threatening woman. Her silence triggers my pain from experienced verbal abuse at home. When I was growing up, I see my angry outburst with a brand new awareness. Now I'm the one, not my dad, but I'm the one inflicting that pain. I feel so disconnected and alienated. I'm off. It's happening again. I'm losing it, I think to myself. There's a sadness and disappointment within myself. It overwhelms me. In this moment, time seems to have stopped. It's a moment of reckoning. Right now, I find myself believing I'm more than my anger. Yes, I can be kind and caring and funny and helpful. Ellen, just let go of your anger, I hear inside me. I don't want to behave like this again. It can be such a pattern with me. I want to be open to living this moment out in a very different way. I'm overwhelmed with a want and a need to be reconciled, to be one with myself and this non-threatening woman. I sense a movement within myself to surrender and take a risk with her. So I say to her, I'm not angry with you. My anger is from past visits here. This bulletproof wall scares me. Verbalizing to her, my body starts to relax. My voice tone is different. I'm no longer feeling the intensity of my anger. I feel good verbalizing in the moment about the origins of my anger regarding this place. There's still some fear in me as I try to continue to speak. I want to be honest, yet I don't want to harm her anymore. Can I do both? I decide to simply articulate what's going on inside me right now. And I say to her, I feel intensely afraid here. I don't like this environment or this neighborhood, and I live here. I don't feel safe. I hate the bulletproof wall. I feel like I'm being treated like a criminal, yet I haven't done anything wrong. Sharing my story with her makes me feel better. She listens without interrupting, and I feel accepted by her. She listens and replies empathically. I don't live in this neighborhood, nor would I care to. I'd be afraid too if I lived here. But the wall is here because we have been held up There are a lot of drug users in this neighborhood. We have to protect ourselves. Calmly, I tell her, I understand the need for the wall, but I still don't like it. She seems to understand. She tells me just this once, she'll take care of stamping the remainder of the envelopes. I feel grateful. I ask for her name and I thank her. We both smile. I leave the post office feeling both unnerved and relieved. I'm upset for getting so angry at her, and yet I'm glad at a deep level that I was respectful of her in the end. I am reminded how often I have thought, discussed, reflected, and tried to picture myself being able to do this someday in public. A gentle peace returns. I feel happy inside for choosing to respond with personal regard and caring respect. Everything seems so different to me. This place doesn't feel so ominous. I happily intuit that this encounter will have lasting effects.
Wow, excellent writing. There's a bunch in there, so can I make a few comments on that?
Sure.
One thing is just to share that I had a similar experience back in my early 20s. We were down in Southern California. First time I rented a car. We bring the car back and it's like, 20 minutes past 24 hours. And so the guy at the counter says, I got to charge you for a second day. And I was like, I lost my temper. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, it's 20 minutes past. Like, and he's like, nope, that's the policy. If it's past 24 hours, it's a whole second day. Me having never rented a car before, I had no clue what the rule was. And I felt it was very arbitrary and unfair, kind of like your experience. And it makes me think that one of the universal anger triggers is bureaucracy or being stopped or being treated unfairly. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of made me think, and I wonder what percentage of the population has also experienced something like this. The other thing that comes to mind is this: you have a lot of emotions about emotion in that paragraph or in that piece. So to me, it makes me think of meta emotion. And I think this happens to us so often. It's feeling about feeling. So it's, you get angry, you lose your temper, and then you feel guilty about it. Then you feel sad about it. Then you're angry at yourself for getting angry. Then you're ashamed, and so it creates this vicious downward spiral where it's not just that we lost our temper. Now we're beating ourselves up mercilessly for having lost our temper.
Sure, for sure. And I've even experienced, not to the extent of this event that I wrote about, but other times where it can spiral down into self-hate. Yeah.
Self-loathing, self-flagellation, absolutely. And now, the inner critic in us is just brutal for most people. Yes. I've talked to a lot of people about that inner voice. And one person once told me, because I usually talk as if I'm that inner voice, so I swear a lot because my inner voice swears a lot at me. And so this one person said, no, I don't swear at myself in my own head. And I was like, oh my God, you're the one. You're the chosen one. Like, you don't have any. Yeah. Okay. Seriously, I've only met one person that's ever said that. But
you know what that is?
Go ahead. Yes. Go ahead.
No, it just brought up a story I was thinking about. So my entire teaching career of over 44 years, has mostly been in religious schools or parishes or church context. And I was giving a day retreat. And I will often tell the group that comes to me for a day's spiritual retreat or any kind of retreat, I'll just say, I just want, after I've introduced myself and stuff, but I want to tell them up front, I say, you know what? I just want you to know that my favorite expression is holy shit. and it could come out. And I said, I usually use it if I'm really excited, like, holy shit, that's awesome. Or if I'm scared, like, holy shit, what just happened? So I tell people up front, especially these are Catholics, because if anybody, I find that group of people in my experience is going to be, oh my God, what did she just say? So I just get it up front, say it up front. So what happened was I gave this day retreat or a couple hours, 2-3 hours, and I'm called into my supervisor's office, not the pastor's, but somebody a little bit, a religious sister. And she goes, Ellen, somebody just came into my office and said, you said hell. I'm like, come on. Now, sometimes, so she's like, you can't do that. I said, because you're asking me, I will try not to, but like, get over it. Come on, folks. Yeah. And sometimes, as I mentioned to you, I was a religious sister for a number of years. And so as people get to know that, sometimes I would on purpose say, holy shit, or my new one. I don't know why it is, but to me, it's kind of, I go, what the fuck? Now, I don't really say that in public. I don't say it in public so much, but somebody will tell me something and it's like so funny, or like you want to say, are you kidding me? That happened? So it just comes up and I say it around people who are safe. But sometimes I'll use it with very religious people, to say, it's okay. We're not going to go to hell, and God doesn't really give a shit, I don't think.
Well, here's the thing. And so one of the things that I was really excited to have you on is that you do have a past as a Catholic nun. Yeah. And I think it's so freeing and liberating and helpful for other people to say, oh my gosh, there's a former nun out there that gets angry, or there's a former nun out there that swears or has a sense of humor. And it kind of blows up the stereotype, which I love, because I think we all do. I don't know about swearing, but we all get angry. And the Catholic Church in particular, I think, really struggles with some of these darker, more negative emotions.
Right.
If you get angry, you're not, praying enough, or you can't get angry at God, which I think is silly to me.
Yeah. And there's been different spiritualities in the past that kind of separated body, spirit, they weren't connected. So, I think anytime, and that's part of a struggle for me, is that the church needs to be more open to what science is saying, psychology is saying, all the different sciences, what we can learn from them, to become more integrative and really accepting of lots of varieties of people.
I think accepting is one of the big keys there. Both those words, integrated and self-accepting, is huge. And I think, like Buddhism is quite good about that, about accepting science. I mean, the Dalai Lama has said, I'm happy to submit my monks to the labs in the West. And if science finds something that overturns a basic tenet of Buddhism, I'll change Buddhism. Yeah. And I like the flexibility of thinking there. Judaism does somewhat the same thing, where they encourage questioning of the religion itself. Catholicism to me, and I'm not a religious expert, but Catholicism to me seems more like, listen to what I'm saying, accept it, believe it, do not go against what I say. Now, I think that's changed a little bit, but you would know more than I.
Well, I did some ministry, and I was on staff at a progressive Presbyterian church in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I did some freelancing there while I was working on writing on my dissertation. And then they hired me to be the director of a spirituality center. And what I learned from them was, and then when you go into the church, they have like not coat racks, the little hooks where you can put your coat.
Yeah.
And I felt like in Catholicism, now this is not true of every Catholic church, right? There's such variety. But in some that I've experienced, I feel like we've been asked to not just hang up our coat, we didn't on the hook, but your brain, everything else, go into the church kind of without the totality of your own being.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it's interesting, at one point, when I was in ministry in that particular Presbyterian church for almost 6 years, I was still very much engaged in the Catholic Church. So I'd go to my Catholic Mass on Saturday nights. And then Sundays often, there are like 12 professionals on staff at this Presbyterian church. And some were different denominations. I'm Catholic. Somebody else was a UCC minister. So a lot of variety. But we would all be asked to do things at the Sunday service at the Presbyterian church. And I remember a friend of mine asking me, well, was I still Catholic? Because I worked at a Protestant church. And I said to them, look, I've met Catholics, I know of them, worked with them, where when it was time to go to communion, to receive Holy Communion, when their pew got up, they went to receive Holy Communion. That's what Holy Communion meant to them. The pew got up, so they followed the person in front. There are some Catholics, if you'd say, well, what do you believe? Why do you go to communion? They're not going to say, because my pew got up and I followed the lead. They'll say, they may say something like, I believe in the real presence of Jesus Christ in that sacrament. Okay. There are Protestants in that Presbyterian church who they receive Holy Communion because they truly believe in the presence of Jesus in that sacrament. And there are others who get up because their pew gets up. So I said to them, here's what I've come to believe. Both the Protestants that I knew in that Presbyterian church and the Catholics that I've known, whether you believe in transubstantiation or consubstantiation, I said, you know what? People are going to argue about that for all eternity, let's say. But what we all believe is somehow Jesus shows up. And that was good enough for me. So can I still be Catholic and working in a Protestant? Of course. I'm not doing that now, but people want to box people in.
Mm-hmm. It's a shortcut to thinking, I would argue.
Yeah, it cuts us off in so many ways.
Let me ask you this, because this is one of the, and I know you don't speak for the whole Catholic Church, but one of the problems that
Thank you for that, John.
Yeah, well,
I feel absolved. I feel absolved.
Hold on, let me get some holy water. No. But here's the problem I have with Catholicism, and I guess more broadly Christianity. If I can imagine or conceptualize of a God that is omnipotent and omnipresent and omniscient. And if I put myself in that God's shoes, which is kind of hard to do, I don't see myself putting one religious icon or figure in one section of the world and saying, this is the only pathway to heaven. Where, especially back in that time, 2/3, 3/4 of the earth had no access to him or his teachings. If I were all-knowing and all-powerful, I would put different religious icons in different parts of the world that were culturally specific, offering teachings that offered a better way of being. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you should be interviewed for the position.
Have you ever seen Two Popes? By the way,
yes.
I think it's Netflix. That's fantastic.
Yes.
Sorry. Anyway,
so here's where we're going to get to my level of, I don't know, it's not discomfort, but it's an unknowing that you're really touching on this whole notion of God. In April, I was diagnosed with pneumonia and the flu, and I was really, really sick. And I was probably in bed for 2.5 days. And I had this amazing experience. I've had them before. They're not, I've had it before, but this was like, and it happened in the wee hours of dawn. It was still dark out and I'm rolling around. I'm in bed for a couple days. And I had been struggling with, I'm losing my moorings. This has been over a period of, say, a few years, but it came down to, I'm losing my moorings. I'm losing what is connecting me to all that is. I'm losing. And really what's been happening to me over the years is my Roman Catholicism was my hermeneutic. It was the way I integrated life for myself, for people who came to me for spiritual direction at the retreat center where I worked or the parishes or wherever. All of that was getting torn, felt like it was getting torn away. So I had this image in that moment in April, mid-April, in the wee hours, where you're half asleep, but you're turning over.
Oh, yeah.
And here's what I heard. Ellen, what if it's good? What if losing your moorings is good and it's going to bring you to greater freedom? Oh my God, that changed everything for me. What hope.
It makes me think of, and I can't remember the philosopher because that's like 35 years ago, but I believe it was Jacques Derrida who said that, one of the best ways for real spiritual and psychological growth is via a shattering of one's framework. And so it's like taking the glasses off through which you view the world and throwing them on the ground and stepping on them. And then you have to get down on your hands and knees and piece them back together, which necessarily means that you're going to view the world differently.
Yes.
And, ideally more in a more evolved way. Mm-hmm. And that's what that makes me think of. We assume that it's going to be bad. And I think it's great and terrible at the same time, right? It's difficult and painful. And yet the end result, I believe, is better.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. See, and that's what my doctoral work is all about. And that's why I think I want to write about this event where I think these ordinary things happen to people every day. I think many times people don't know to really pause later, go back to that and reflect upon it because it becomes, we talk about the flow of spiritual formation. Spiritual formation meaning the totality of your being in this world, in relationship with other people and the larger world around you, that there's this flow of coming from something. So for me, from anger, and I get to gratitude, and then I look at what's the through movement. I go from anger to gratitude. What broke into this that helped me shift into gratitude? And that's where in my story, the woman didn't scream back at me. Who does that? You scream and yell, somebody screams and yells back, right? That's how it was in our family.
Yeah.
Da, 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 da. Somebody else, bam, bam, bam. The woman was silent. And in that silence, and it was split second, I'm talking nanoseconds, but in that split second of silence, I'm reminded of, oh my God, I'm acting like Terrence, my dad. And I was the apple of his eye. I had a nice relationship with my dad, but he screamed and yelled every day at my mother and one of my brothers. And then in that moment, I recognized, oh my gosh, I'm doing that. And in that moment, I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to be different. So in that moment of silence, I'm remembering all these things. And then this desire bubbles up in me, and I hear, Ellen, you're more than your anger. You're kind, you're caring, you're helpful, and yeah. See, and I think that was a big clincher for me as I look back now is, oh, wow, I am good. I can be good right now. I can be a better person.
There's a couple of things that bubble up for me as you're saying that. One is that I think one of our fundamental needs, or maybe three of our fundamental needs, is to be seen, heard, and validated.
I like
and
that.
The postal worker employee did a great job of not reacting to you, but she responded more thoughtfully. And it feels to me, and you can answer this better than I, but it feels to me like she saw you. She heard you. She validated that, the bulletproof glass or wall is scary. That going to the post office does make you feel like you've done something wrong. I get that.
Absolutely. And I think, she replied with empathy. And to me, that's the game changer. That was the game changer. The title of my dissertation is Moving from Anger to Gratitude, the Formative Power of an empathic encounter.
Have you looked at Buddhism in that regard?
Yes, as a matter of fact, in our dissertations, we had to also, whatever we were trying to validate, so we did research on a generic human being. Then we did research again with now a human being with a religious context. So we had to go outside of the researcher's faith tradition. So mine's Christian. I chose Buddhism. You could choose whatever you want because you had to validate that what you're trying to say in your research is also true in another faith tradition. Mm-hmm. And then we had to also apply our research and our to a particular group that I myself belong to. So I had to take my research, and I chose Christian women in therapy because that was my experience. I was a Christian woman in therapy. Trying to think if I was in therapy at that moment or a few years before. But anyway, so yes. And there are, yes. So I did study Buddha. If you ask me now, I'm not going to remember all the
that's Buddhism okay. Stuff, I think it dovetails nicely with that point. And one of the things that I think we would all benefit from is by looking for similarities rather than differences. And I see this, you see this in the naming trends of new parents lately, right? That many of them are trying to do these, unusual, unique first names for their child. So they stand out and they're separate and they're different and they're special. And I really believe that what we need as human beings is far less of differentiating ourselves from one another and far more of looking for how we're similar. And that's why I love the level of emotion, because my experience has been that on that emotional level, we're all the same. So I may not have had the same experiences as you, but the emotions that have resulted from your experiences are almost identical to the ones I've had. Mm-hmm. And so it's the foundation of empathy to me. And I see the same thing as we were talking about Christianity and Buddhism. I think we'd be far better served if we looked for how are these world religions similar than different.
Yeah. And when I was a sister at one of our academies, actually here in the area, I taught, I think, seniors world religions. And what was so wonderful was when these young girls would say, because they were born and raised Catholic, as I was too. Their friends were Catholic. They hung around with Catholic, folks. But they realized, oh, wow, this faith tradition, this one, they have sacred texts too, or they pray, all these commonalities. Because I said, you're going to be going off to college, and many of you won't know who your at that time who your roommate was going to be, and who else you're going to be putting with a lot of different people. And how can we honor and respect that and learn from it and grow from it? So absolutely, I think we need to find what's common to us. Yeah.
So thank you for sharing.
I want to go back to one. Oh, go ahead.
God, there's so many places I want to go. Okay, go ahead.
Well, when you started talking about God, so when I talked about I'm losing my moorings and I had that experience, I'd say since 2017, 18 maybe, so not long, I've been introduced to the writings of a Franciscan sister by the name of Ilia Delio. Delio. And the name of her website is the Center for Christogenesis, all one word. But what I'm finding is for her, now she's a Franciscan sister, but she is so outside the box of Catholicism. She's in it, but maybe there's lots of holes that she's able to permeate, because she's got like 2 PhDs, one's in pharmacology. She studied neurobiology. She's got another one in historical theology or something like that, and then a couple of masters. Anyway, she's on YouTube. She's she's really good she's easier to understand on YouTube than to read her books. Her books are very dense. But she's saying, what about God as evolution?
Yeah.
Not in the beginning was the word, but in the beginning was matter. And we know all matter has some form of consciousness, and Teilhard de Chardin, she's a Teilhard de Chardin scholar, says, and this is now so I'm trying to build some new foundations for myself that honor who I am as an evolving Ellen at this point in her life at 70 years old. So my new founding block is love is the heart of the universe. Now, not romantic love, but you could think in terms of romantic love. There's attraction. So in the particles, the cells, the atoms, the molecules, whatever, there are things that are attracted to something else. And in that attraction, new life emerges. And as new things emerge, things come together. And as things come together, new forms that wouldn't exist unless these came together start to emerge. And this is going on in a quantum way.
Right.
Quantum, everything's interrelated to everything else. And then that nonlinear reality of you've got two particles right there at your desk, and one particle's at your desk and another we're going to put 2,000 miles away from you. So they've already interacted. They're quantumly entangled.
Yep. One's
here and one's 1,500 miles away. And somehow, if you did something to the one near you, the one that's 1,500 miles away is going to be impacted. And there's no way they can explain how does that communication happen. I think Einstein called it spooky something.
Spooky entanglement?
Yeah,
I think so.
That there's this mysterious...
And he couldn't explain it.
No.
He didn't even believe in it.
I was going to say he was suspicious of, yeah.
Yeah. And now it's been proven in studies.
Yes.
It's been shown to be true, which is wild.
Exactly.
But
so I don't even
speaks to the truth of, to the spiritual truth of all is one, or all are interconnected. Yes. And that to me is a huge foundational truth, because if I really, really grasp that truth, then I'm not going to attack my brother on any level.
Yeah. Well, I got a story for you from yesterday, but I won't share it. No, I won't share it. Because I know it. I believe it deep in my heart. And boy, did I get triggered about a contractor that's not getting his work done after 14 months, And I
so
found
you're
myself
human,
texting.
Right? Damn it.
Yes. And then I go back to my prayer chair. That part frustrates me,
honestly. Because I still have to deal with this 5-layer meat sack that I reside in. You know what I mean? And that's a reality. I have this meat suit that I wear, and yet I've also got this intellect and emotion and spiritual aspect to myself too. And trying to make all those wholly integrated, to use your terms, is frustrating as hell at times.
Yeah. I used to tell I feel you, John. I used to tell my students to get at that same dynamic where we're emotional beings, we're thinking beings, we're vocational, we do things. I've got my preform, who I was in the womb and what my cultural, my history. And I used to tell my students about the Pillsbury Doughboy. So we're the Pillsbury Doughboy, and life pokes at us through all these different dimensions of our being. And all these dimensions of our being are in constant dialogue with each other. I'm not aware of it until I am. Oh my gosh, my foot hurts. Or, I was deeply hurt by what that person said to me. Then I tune in. That's why it's so important that we have a prayer chair, or we have a place or a space where we can catch our breath. But we have to be intentional, I think, about, what happened today? This is an Ignatian, St. Ignatius of Loyola. One of his practices I used to share with folks is when you put your head on the pillow at night, just take a quick, review. Push the playback button. Was there anything that stands out to you that was awesome? Just note it. And what about, was there anything that took your life away, or took your energy away, or depleted you, or upset you severely? And some people will keep a log of it, because then you can chart these things, and you can actually, here's how I would say it in Christian language, you can actually see how God is directing you in your life if you pay attention to it. So now I would say, So you can see how you're the wholeness, WHOLE-ness of life, because all of this is in dialogue. My body, mind, spirit is all in dialogue with the greater universe, cosmos, world, what's going on in CNN, what people get through social media. We are one big attraction, right? And that's a lot to sort out. That's why discernment is really, really important. I used to talk about discernment as, you know, the guys were panning for gold. So they get all this muck in their sieve or whatever they were using. And then you're shaking it. And that's what we do and that's what I want to do through this book, I think, is for people who want to maybe look at something in their life, I can teach them how to peel off those layers, all that stuff that's going on, all these different levels of our being in dialogue with the greater mystery, whatever people call God. And you can see, you learn so much. You grow and you change, and it's a transformational experience. It's been that for me. Yeah.
Well put. Yeah. I like panning for the nuggets of gold.
But some people don't want to do it, John.
It's
my
scary.
one relative is like, I don't want to go there.
Hell no.
I think, like, she's basically saying, I think what you did was totally wrong. You got upset in public. How could you? And that's sinful probably. And I'm like, you're missing the point.
Yeah.
Just be a human being and goodness will flow if we're open to it. And how do I stay open? What helps me? And one of the things that helps, I think, if somebody gets angry and blows up at you, John, for you just to stay silent, give them a chance to hear themselves. That's a helpful thing.
Well, you know what? One of the things I try to practice, which I'm not always doing, but on a good day, I will wish loving kindness thoughts upon them when they're losing their temper with me. So I'll be thinking in my mind, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you live life with ease and well-being.
Yes.
And I don't know if it does anything for them, but it does bring my physiology down and relaxes me. And then hopefully they will pick up through empathy on my physiology and it will relax them too. Yes. But I have a story that I want to share with you and I want to get your thoughts on because it bugs me. It's like society's reaction or maybe Christianity's reaction to it. So back when I was a school psychologist, I was a rookie. And I remember I had a GATE teacher, so a teacher of like kids with 99 percentile IQ and above. And she said, hey, can you talk to a student of mine? She lost a niece recently and she's been sobbing in class for a day or two. And I said, yeah, sure. Like, I what am I going to say? Like, it's one of those great tragedies that philosophers, theologians, I mean, everyone's tried to solve. Like, why would a God allow bad things to happen to good, innocent people? Anyways, she comes in and she starts explaining her story and she starts crying. And she says, there was her cousin and her aunt and uncle. The family lives like a mile away. The families are very close. They're Christian. And the parents had a newborn daughter who died at 6 months of age of sudden infant death syndrome. No one's to blame. Just, it's tragic. And so I'm thinking, I'm like, shit, what do I say to this? And I said, well, okay, so you're a Christian, right? And she said, yeah. I said, so do you believe to some extent that God had a hand in making all of this? And she said, yeah. I said, okay, so would you agree that God had a hand in making your emotions? And she said, yeah. So, okay. So my belief is that God knows that you're going to be really, really angry with him, furious with him. And your anger to him is like a drop of rain in a rainstorm. And he's already forgiven you for that anger. He knew it was coming, not a big deal to him. He's forgiven it. You're good with him. Now you just need to forgive yourself for getting angry with God. And her first response was, oh no, I couldn't do that. That's a sin. Yeah. And I get it. I get it from a religious perspective. And yet, kind of the 5-layer meat sack idea, yet we're also human. And we have these emotions that we have to figure out the best way to deal with them. Yeah. And So anyway, so I got her to this acceptance of the fact that she was really pissed off at God, which makes absolute sense to me on an emotional level.
Yeah.
And I think that this happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are things that happen in our life that no human is to blame.
Right.
Cancer, genocide, suicide, whatever. I mean, there's all sorts of things you could point to. And our human response is to get enraged with God and say, how could you allow this to happen? And I wonder how much of this dynamic is responsible for something like atheism. Because I've talked to a lot of people where they're like, screw you, God, and they turn their back on God and they walk away. And I think that's based in anger.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because I've talked about this for years and it makes people really uncomfortable. And I did a 7-class mini course on forgiveness for Simple Habit.
Mm-hmm.
And the 7th class was on forgiving God for this. It was on this topic. They cut that class. They didn't include it.
Ah, too risky.
And I was like, you chicken shits.
Yeah.
This is important.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, do you have any thoughts on that?
Wow. You're just bringing up a lot of stuff here, John. First, I want to go back to one thing that I heard in the beginning. I thought, wow, that was awesome. Where you helped that young girl to understand that her own emotions were good.
Yeah, normal.
Even if she was feeling anger, One time that's coming to mind now where somebody shared something really, really sad. I don't know that they were angry at God, though. That's the part that would be different.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember saying something. Now, this is a while back. This is how I would have said it was, perhaps God is weeping with you, But when something or someone is taken from us that we can't explain, maybe that's where we have to teach people or start exploring what could be our response. Because who teaches us how to deal with stuff like that? And maybe they're hearing about how could God do this from adults, which I totally understand. I don't know that I have any kind of answer for that. I think what you did was awesome.
No, thanks. To me, it's fascinating because I think it is that intersection of humanity and spirituality. And that's where the rubber meets the road sometimes. And that's where things get uncomfortable.
Yes. And to me, that's what spiritual formation is all about. Where daily living is where we experience God. Daily life. But we have to have the eyes to see and the ears to hear and perhaps learn ways to notice, to track, to believe. But I had not thought in terms of atheism and being, angry with God, but I could see that.
And I'm not saying every atheist.
No. Yeah,
right. I could definitely see a significant percentage of them.
Yeah, that's where I think people have to learn to explore who they are.
Yeah.
Explore those thoughts. One of the things that, I'm so enjoying about you and your other podcasts is why can you speak so openly is because you've delved into your own stuff and claimed it as your own. I think that's what some of my friends will say. Well, Ellen, you know how to say it. Well, I know how to say it because I'm working with it.
Yeah, you've done the work.
I've done the work.
And the work is uncomfortable.
It is. But to me, it's worth it.
Oh, yeah.
It's who I am. It's what I'm about. And so I want to thank you for that.
Oh, you
Evolved
absolutely.
Caveman. You know what I wanted to tell you when I was looking at, I said, what's the name of the podcast? And I thought, you know what, John, it's just a suggestion. But what about the evolving caveman?
Oh, Ellen. Damn it. You're right on point. I was going to say that. And actually, you're the second guest that said that to me, and you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And I came up with the name, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. And then later I was like, oh shit, I'm not done. I'm never done.
Yeah. And it doesn't even have to be, oh shit, because it's like that to me is the essence of life, where that's why I want people's input on, hey, what do you think about what I've written, or what ideas do you have, or what would you, because that's you evolving. That's you emerging.
Yeah. Well, and the way that I think about it is it's not me that is the evolved caveman. The evolved caveman is like a platonic ideal that we are striving towards.
Sure. Yeah. But evolving, because that's what our universe is. And that's what our bodies are and our minds are. And that's really what I'm learning is really the essence of what life's about.
I think life is about change and learning to accept change and learning to figure out the best way to evolve and deal with it.
Change for what purpose, would you say?
That's a really good question. I would think change for increased connection, increased love, increased understanding of how do we integrate this mind, body, spirit of this 5-layer meat sack that we are in. Because I mean, it makes me think of, like Descartes, who said, I think, therefore I am, which really took me off track for years because he separated mind and body. Mm-hmm. And I think, I imagine, and I'm not sure, there's the same thing between spirituality and body somewhere. And that's not the point. I think that takes us off track. The point is, how do we integrate all these different aspects of ourselves, come to some form of self-acceptance and peace so that we can connect more fully and more authentically with other human beings or other beings?
Yeah, if that would be like a common goal of humanity, maybe there wouldn't be all these wars. Yeah. Maybe but I feel like I participated in a little way yesterday with this texting with this contractor, and there's a win-win situation. He doesn't want to do it, and da-da-da-da-da. Anyway, for me, I think one of the reasons I loved working when I was in Florida for 14 years. I got asked to come down and work with a Catholic cathedral there. And for a little bit, and then I did some other stuff. But I got involved. I was asked to get involved with drug rehabs, working with addicts and alcoholics. Love that work. When I moved here to the St. Louis area, found out Missouri doesn't accept 350 credits of addictions training. I'm like, oh. But what I loved about working with addicts and alcoholics, they were like me in a sense that I was like them, although I didn't have a drug of choice that I was struggling with per se, sugar maybe, but I just found that like me, many of them, not all, but many of them wanted to change and become a better person. And somebody asked me once, somebody from the rehab where I was working, Ellen, one of the classes I was attending was, well, what do you want your patients, your clients to know? When you're running spirituality groups with 20, 25 folks, what do you want them to know? I said that at their core, they're good. And I really think, John, that what I really want others to know is what I struggle with myself.
Yeah.
Because when I was angry like that, in my core, who feels good about screaming and yelling at somebody? That's why that was so powerful. Ellen, you're more than your anger. That freed me up to then be open to something else. Open your mouth and apologize. I learned that. I learned how to do that in therapy. Then I could do my therapeutic helps. It was articulate what's going on right now. I'm so sorry. I'm afraid. I'm scared. Da, 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 da. And my faith then was saying, yeah, I want to be reconciled with this person. I did some harm here and I want to make up for that. So it's just all this stuff is going on in our being. And it's like, like here I had to plug in my cord to put this headset. We're plugging in. There's so much stuff coming at us. So
yeah, this conversation has been truly enjoyable. I've loved this conversation. I love you, love your energy. Thank you for coming alongside and just chatting with me.
Oh, loved it, John. Thank you so much for the invite. And I look forward to any feedback from your listeners. Would be so helpful.
Regarding that feedback, please email Ellen at connectingthroughanger@gmail.com, where the through is THRU, connectingthroughanger@gmail.com. Ellen, any last parting words? Any last bits of wisdom?
Well, here's what I always share with people. There's more to me than what you see. There's more to me than XYZ. Life, God, reality is always poking at us. And if we can just tune in, find a prayer chair, find some space, put some nice quiet music on, relaxing music, and just tune into who you are. You're more than your anger. You have some say. Each one of us has a say in who we are becoming. Sometimes I'm good at participating in that. And sometimes I say, the hell with it, not today. So thank you, John. Yeah.
My pleasure. Thank you. And that is it for this episode of the Evolved Caveman, or the Evolving Caveman. If you liked this show, please like, rate, review, and share it. If you didn't like it, you don't have to do a damn thing. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Evolved Caveman Podcast. If you like what you've heard, support us by subscribing, leaving reviews, and sharing the podcast with friends and colleagues. For the latest, most powerful tools to connect with like-minded men, join the Facebook group at The Evolved Caveman. Follow Dr. John on Instagram at The Evolved Caveman, all one word, or join the email list by visiting guidetoself.com.